Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Timer Tip Tuesday. I'll be your host today, Matt Avery. Crisp is along here with me, who will be answering questions along with Shelly Harris. Today what we're going to be going through is the critical setup for challenges if you're a timer. So the main takeaway for today will be giving you an overview of what challenges are, how to set them up, so that you can understand the basic examples of what a challenge is and how you should configure it based on the different types you may want to set up for your events or events that you're setting up on the behalf of others. So without further ado, let's get started. If any of you were on the Race Joy for Challenges webinar last week, the beginning slides of this session will be a bit familiar. So we took them from that webinar, but we'll be diving in a little bit further into the actual setup of an event so that we can really give you more of a in-depth dive into how to actually create a challenge, how to set up all the different things you need to set up, and what it looks like from a user standpoint, registering for the race, logging your mileage, and going in the back end, verifying that things look all right, and making any adjustments you may need to as a timer. So this is really about training you as a timer to be knowledgeable of the challenge platform so you can be successful. And with the knowledge that there are a ton of cool, crazy, weird scenarios that you could set up or may want to set up, it's important that you understand the base cases so that you can build on that knowledge with more complicated examples. But again, today, we're really going to focus on those more simple, straightforward examples so you can have a great general understanding of the product and what it can offer to your races. So let's dive in. I'm assuming all of you can see my screen. If you can't or if something goes wrong, please let me know in the chat. So I always do that, so I clicked the wrong button here. So we're going to get started with a few slides, like I said, and then we're actually going to walk into the RunSignup wizard and actually create a race and set up a few different types and examples of challenges you could do. But yeah, let's get started. This one may be a little bit longer than other Timer Tip Tuesdays. We'll see. I really want to try and get through a lot today, but let's just get started. So again, sorry if this is a review for some of you, but I do want to go into this for those of you who are not on the webinar last week. So before we go into the details, what are they and how do they differ from virtual races and what are the different types? So a virtual challenge, again, it's a special type of virtual event that will give participants the ability to log multiple activities over time. That's different from a virtual race because virtual race is more like you just go out and run a 5K. Everybody runs wherever they'd like to, but they all say that they ran a different time for a set distance. A challenge is like you can run all different distances on different days, different types of activities, and all sorts of other things. So that's the main distinction between a virtual race and a virtual challenge. So talking about challenges today. Challenges, again, are where people can record multiple different activities over a period of time. But before you decide to get started setting up a challenge, it's important to spend some time to think about how you want it to work. We find that there are two main types of challenges that are set up with our platform. Basically, the two main styles are fixed distance challenges and open-ended challenges. So each of these has a unique setup. It's important to know what you want to accomplish before you start setting things up. If you try to set it up one way and flip it over to change it and score it a different way afterwards, things can get really complicated and messy. So I highly recommend that you sit down and think about what you're trying to do before you actually go in and set it up and start, getting people to register and logging results for it. So let's talk about these different types. We have an open-ended and a fixed distance challenge again. So the open-ended are the types of events where there's no defined end goal. It's basically like try and just log as much as you possibly can over a course of time. And the goal is just to see who accumulated the most amount of mileage, let's say. Now, challenges are really flexible. You can do all sorts of things like elevation gain or total time. But for this basic example, let's just talk about mileage. So who can do the most amount of runs over the course of a month and log the most mileage? That's a basic example of what an open-ended challenge could be. A fixed distance challenge is a little bit different. That is usually where there's an end goal in mind. So you may have like a challenge that's run across the United States of America. You have a set goal of whatever, 3,000 miles, whatever it is, to run across the United States of America. And the goal is to reach that endpoint. Once a person has reached that endpoint, they've officially, completed the challenge, and they've won basically because they were the first ones to do so. So, running along through a state or a country or something like that, it's a little bit different because we don't want to see who's done the most amount of mileage necessarily. We want to see who reached the end goal first. So we have some different examples of ways to set things up with challenges that cater to these different types, better or worse. So let's talk about that. Side note on that, on either case, like I said, you can always do different sorts of parameters for your challenges. You can say, instead of doing mileage, you want to do elevation gain. So total elevation gain of, say, climbing Mount Everest instead of running across the country. In addition, you can always set up things like multiple activity types, which I'll get into more detail on later. That just allows the user to say that they did a specific type of activity. And sometimes that's great, sometimes it's not great, and we'll talk about it a little more later. Next, we'll talk about challenge results sorting. So challenges can be sorted in a few different ways, and our best recommendation depends on the type of challenge that you're setting up. So whether it's an open-ended one or a fixed distance one, we recommend different things. Do you want to say the person should be ranked ahead of someone else if they have a greater distance, or the most elevation gain, or the lowest time, or fastest pace, or the first to reach an endpoint? These are all questions you should ask yourself when you're trying to set these things up. So here's our recommendation for these two main types of scenarios. For events that don't have a defined end goal, we recommend one of the options that sorts results based on the greatest amount of something. So for instance, these are great options for an open-ended challenge, like the greatest distance, most elevation gain, the greatest amount of time spent, fastest pace. We also have things like total number of activities, most number of days of activity, and other things like that. So those are really nice for open-ended challenges. And they're really pretty simple and straightforward because it's not complicated when you look at the results sorting. It's like, okay, I can see that this person did more mileage than the next person, so it's pretty obvious that they won. For fixed distance challenges, things get a little bit more complicated. We really want to say that we always recommend that you use the earliest milestone completion date because you don't necessarily want to give the person who logged more mileage the first place award. You want to make sure that the person who actually hit that point first got it. So what this will do is it will always sort results with the first person to reach some defined distance or elevation gain or whatever you have for this event. Even if someone else ends up logging more mileage, they will not jump ahead because they have a greater total distance. So this is pretty important. We like to recommend the fixed distance challenges use this milestone locked feature for result sorting because it doesn't restrict users from continuing to log if they want to. And also it doesn't throw up an error message if you tried to set up a limit on how many miles they can log. We don't like that because it basically cuts the user off if they went out on a run, they have 1.5 miles left to complete a challenge, they ran a 5K. They don't want to have to figure out what was my time over 1.5 miles or 1.62 miles. They want to just say, well, I just ran a 5K, can I just log it? And so using this system of sorting, it will allow them to go over the distance you want them to hit, but it will still sort them correctly because the sorting will be done based on the date they unlocked and not their total distance. So that's why we like using this milestone locked feature instead of total distance and a hard limit for miles logged. So let's get into how to set up a challenge and what you need to do from a timer or a race director standpoint if you are setting up a challenge for the first time. What are the critical items that you need to pay attention to when you're working in challenges? So creating a challenge from scratch, we're going to walk through that. So I mean, going to RunSignup.com and clicking the button to create a race and what that looks like. Setting up activity types, we talked a little bit about that. Setting up milestones, talked a little bit about that. Result sorting options and testing and troubleshooting. So that's what we'll be doing today. Let's get started. So I will be kind of flipping back and forth between a few different screens here. So first, let's get started with this race creation. So when you are on RunSignup and you're about to create a race, what's important to understand is that you need to select the virtual challenge as the event type when you're creating your race and events on RunSignup. So let's actually do that right now. Let's go in and say I'm going to set up a test challenge. So it's really one of the cool things about RunSignup is you can set up test races all the time, and I highly recommend you do so. There's no problem setting things up and just saving them as a draft race and just trying things out, seeing what it looks like, seeing what it feels like to register for it, seeing how the results will wind up. You enter a bunch of results for it. It's really useful to understand this process. So that's why I'm walking you through it today. So let's just do our test challenge, call it test challenge, 1, 2, 3 test av, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, test, whatever, doesn't really matter. This is all just test. You can contact me, that's fine. So here we go, we're now setting up our events. So I'm gonna do 2 different types of challenges, one open-ended and one that is a fixed distance. So for my open-ended one, I'm gonna say run a lot. And we're going to call it a virtual challenge because this is how we say that it's actually going to be a challenge, and some things will be set up in the back end for us if we do this. So virtual race / challenge, and we'll see these 2 little tick boxes show. Do we want to let participants submit their own results? Yeah, we do. Do we want, or is this virtual event a challenge? So this is really important if you are actually setting up a challenge and not just a virtual race. So this is where we decide, is this a virtual 5K that everybody runs the same distance, or is it a challenge where everybody is logging miles over a period of time? So this is extremely important. Now you can always, go in and change things around to make it a challenge after you've already set it up. But if you're just creating a race for the first time, this is really a great way to get started. It'll set up some defaults for you on the back end and really get you onto the right path of setting up a challenge. So we have to enter in the dates of our activity submission starting and ending times. So this will be the times over which your participants will be able to submit their own activities. So let's just say they can do it today until next year. And that looks good. I'll also add in another event, and this is going to be my run a specific distance. And that is going to be another virtual race challenge. And I'm going to keep the same submission periods in there. All this stuff doesn't really matter because I'm just going to use this as a test race. It doesn't even matter what I put in there. Save it as a draft. This is really important. You don't want this going public. So I'm just going to save it as a draft. Oops. Yeah, test challenge. Go figure, that one's not available. Test challenge 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. How about that? That works. Great. So now I'm just walking through the rest of the wizard. This step I don't care about much. Now my registration step, it's test race. So I'm going to say it's $0. I don't want to spend my own money and pay myself out. Not going to worry about giveaways. Not going to worry about this stuff. I'll put a flag on it. Sure. You can use this test volunteer mode if you like. I have a fake payment account that I can use for it. If you have a payment account, I'll just set it here. Now I have my challenge ready to go pretty much. So now what is important that we need to do, that we have our test challenge set up. So we made sure we had a draft race set up. We checked that box. We made sure that we understood what the submission period is, and we set the event type as virtual challenge. So we've already done a lot of the challenge setup in advance. Now there's a few things we should do before we get started on all of the details of setting up a challenge. First, let's just go into the basic setup under the virtual result settings. So that's found under Race Day Tools, Virtual Challenge Results, Configure Virtual Results. Oops, forgot to do that. So what you see here is we have 2 of these virtual events set up, and we can go in and actually enable virtual results for them. So what I'm going to do next actually is just go ahead and get started by enabling them. So this actually should have been set up automatically. I'm not quite sure why it wasn't, to be honest. But let's just go ahead and set this up. So for my run a lot challenge, I'm going to put a submission starting and ending date in there. I'm going to create a new result set, and it'll just be the virtual run a lot result set. So this is where my results are going to go for this result set. And I'm going to say that, yes, this is a challenge event. Now for this type of challenge, it's a running challenge. So I want to make sure that I collect the distance completed, and I could collect the elevation gain as well. Some people have Garmin's and stuff that record the elevation gain, so you can go ahead and use that. I'm going to use the same dates for accept submissions starting and ending for the activity dates. So this is like the difference here is that the dates of the activities themselves are limited by these two, whereas the time that participant will be able to log them is limited here. So the differentiation again there is the date of the activity versus the date of logging. So I've got the basics done here. Now we're going to talk about this result sorting stuff later on, but for the run a lot challenge, I really just care about who did the most amount of distance. So I'm going to use this setting here to use the greatest distance tally with times the tiebreaker. And for the run a specific distance challenge, we'll do a similar type of thing. Creating a new result set, make it a challenge, check both those boxes and say, oops, my start and end periods. Now we're going to change this up for the specific distance challenge, because we know that we don't want to use this greatest distance option here. We actually want to use the milestone and lock date, but we don't have any milestones set up yet. So we're going to just save it as is and come back to this in a second. So we'll be back on this screen in a few minutes, but for now, this is fine. So next thing you want to do is go to the edit results to view and update result set info. So this kind of ties back to the settings we were just walking through here, this choose a result set. This allows you to create a result set automatically when you're creating this form. So let's check out what that looks like actually. If you go to the menu search, which is a really, really important feature to understand, and just start typing in edit results, you'll see edit results under race day tools, results, edit results. So again, race day tools, results, edit results. This gives you some different tools and management features around result sets, which is where all the results will wind up for these new events that I created. If you use this button called edit metadata, it's a little bit technical sounding, but it actually is just all of the information that is associated with this result set. So things like my email address and questions URL and all these different things. So if you click edit metadata, you'll see all of these options that show up for my result set. So you can change the name of the result set, you can add in a few different things in here, you can make it public or private, you can do all sorts of things with this. But the most important thing I want to talk about is this questions contact email. If you're a timer and you have a different email that you use for like a results@runsignup.com, if you want all of your result correction emails to go to someplace, make sure you put it in here. So I'm going to leave it, but if you're a timer and you have a specific email address that you use for result correction emails, please do this. That way your race directors you're setting up on behalf of don't get questions about results that they don't know how to fix. So as a timer, you really got to be good with knowing how to assist folks who are having trouble correcting the results, because the race directors probably won't know what to do. So that's really important. Again, race day tools, results, edit results, go in here under edit metadata and fill out that questions contact email. All right, so that is the basics for just creating a race and getting the first step of setting up results going. And now we have some more options here in our virtual result settings. We have these new buttons for activity types, notifications, goals and details, all sorts of things. So today I'm going to go through the critical pieces of this setup. There's some things you can do that make it even better. You can add in some really cool things like, you can upload badges and upload more information that shows in the details pages and notifications and all these other things. But I'm not going to go through all that because it's important to understand the basics before we learn all of the fun things that you can add on to it after you understand the basics. So to start with, activity types. Activity types are a way of letting a challenge collect different types of activities that people do. By default, there is no activity types. So if you click activity types for the Run a Lot challenge, you see there's nothing here. And if I were to go in and register for this, we would see that when I log my results, I don't have an option to say that I'm running or cycling or walking or whatever. So that one, basically, you want to do this if you have, there's a couple of different reasons why you may want to do it. The first is you have a challenge that you want to allow people to say that they're going to run or ride or swim or whatever. You definitely want to have multiple activity types, because when you do that, you can let the user then select that when they're logging, they're doing a run or they're doing a ride or they're doing a swim or they're doing a walk. So that's the one use case where it's a good idea to do it no matter what. Now, the other use case, the reason why we recommend it almost all of the time, even if you don't expect different activity types like this one, it's only a running challenge. Why do I need to add an activity type for that? There's two reasons. The first is we insert additional pace checking if you set an activity type. So we're smart. We know we have a basic range of paces that we expect is reasonable for a run versus a ride versus a swim versus a walk. So if you say that all of these activities should be run types, then we are able to, on the front end as a user, they'll see when they enter in a run that has them log in 3-minute miles, we're going to say that's probably not right. You should double check that you entered in something correctly, or that you maybe accidentally entered in a ride as a run. So we highly recommend it, because what that does is it makes sure that, or it helps users prevent bad data from getting in. And as timers, we all understand that bad data is really a bad way to start. So, if you have garbage data in, you're going to have garbage data out, right? So this is really helpful because it reduces the amount of involvement that you will need to have as a timer to make sure that things are running smooth. So even if this is a run a lot, challenge, highly, highly, highly recommend creating a single activity type of run. In this way, users are going to be, informed if their paces look bad. Additionally, if you're using RaceJoy integration for this, RaceJoy does have the ability now to let users log miles as a challenge. We can integrate with that, but we need to make sure that there's at least one activity type here. It will not work if you do not have an activity type set. So if you're using RaceJoy, you need to set this up, period. So let's walk through this a little bit. I have to select an activity type called run. The distance, the data entry tally type, for this one, I always leave it in distance in miles. Now, if people decide that they want to enter it in kilometers or meters or yards or whatever, on the front end, they'll have the option to do so. So all this does is say on the results, it should be displayed as this distance unit. I think that most people should just leave this as miles. If someone wants to enter it in kilometers, they have the option to, and we'll convert it to miles. I think it's way more, it's way simpler if you just leave this as miles. So I always recommend leaving that as miles, unless you're, I don't know, I can't think of a good option. Maybe it's a swim only challenge and you want to do yards or something, but I think miles is usually the best option here. Next, we have to decide for time and elevation gain whether they are allowed, optional, or required. So it kind of depends on what you're doing. For this run a lot challenge, maybe you don't need times. I just think it's a good idea to have them anyways. So I'm going to say they're required. Elevation gain, Maybe not everyone has the ability to log elevation gain, but if they do, show it. So we could say that's optional. Now this max tally, this is something I don't like to use very often, again, because all it does is it cuts people off at a specific distance. And a lot of times people are just logging, they just go out for a run and it says they ran 3.1524 and the next day they ran 6.7236. And suddenly they get home on their third day and they've gone over this arbitrary limit and they're said, hey, you can't log over, 8 miles. They have to do the math and sit and figure out, well, what do I need to take off from my run that I actually did in order to get down to the distance that I'm supposed to hit. So I really don't like having people set this up. There may be some specific things where you want to, but I don't like using it if you don't have to. These two options here are the ability to show splits and custom fields in the results. So basically the way to think about these are, this will show a total time across all of the runs they've done, and this will show a total mileage count for all of the activities of this type that they've done. So if you want to display like the total of all of their times and the total of all of their mileage, you can do that there. These requiring settings here, again, something I don't really like to use unless you have some really specific use case. What they do is they basically make it so that a person's logging their activities will not show in the results table until they have completed one of those activities. I don't like doing this, so I leave it blank. All right, so I've got my single activity type there. Next, let's go on to milestones. So the milestones are more important for the run a specific distance, but I will show them on the run a lot challenge as well. So let's go into goals and milestones for this one. So goals are something that are not really a requirement necessarily, but they do show some cool things on the front end for progress. They show like a little progress bar and it fills up as you do more of the challenge. So if you want to set it up, you certainly can, but it's, I think, really not a results requirement, but it is kind of a cool feature. So if you do want to set it up, it's there for you to do so, but keep in mind, this has nothing to do with the results. So if you don't set it up, it doesn't matter, not a big deal. But if you want to, you can say that everybody, is supposed to do a certain number of miles, or you can say that participants can define their own goals. So if you do this, let participants define their own goals. I actually think it's a really great thing to use for open-ended challenges where it's just run a lot, because now you're able to say to people that, well, I want to run a lot, but I only can do 25 miles a week, but someone else may be able to do 50 miles a week or something like that. So if you do this, let participants define their own goals. We still need to have a default value to give to users, so we can just say, try and run 100 miles, and people will be able to update that if they want to. Otherwise, they can use this default goal for their personal progress bars. We won't talk too much about the rest of this stuff, like displaying a map and showing progress along it. Goal elevation gain is similar to the distance tally. What we want to focus on is this milestones area. So you'll notice, first off, that there are kind of two big sections here. There's the overall goal setup and an activity setup. So this is more useful if there's multiple activity types for an event. So if you had a run and a ride and whatever, you could have 100 different goals for all the different activity types you have if you wanted to. For this one, let's keep it simple. Let's just do an overall goal and some milestones that are associated with it. Now, remember, this is not a fixed distance challenge. This is an open-ended challenge. So the goal of the challenge is really just to do a lot. So we want to be thinking in our heads, well, what makes people want to do more? They want to see that they're doing progress along the way as they go, no matter what, no matter how much they've done. So what I really like for these types of challenges is the repeating distance completed milestone. So a milestone is like, it can be a badge that goes along with it, but basically it's like a thing that you achieve along the way during a challenge. So we have all these different things that you can do here. You could even do % of goal completed for a open-ended challenge. That way it's all tied to whatever the person says they want to do. So if I said my goal is to run 25 miles, if I have a percentage of goal completed at 50%, it will unlock when I hit 12.5 miles. So it's all tied to my personal goal. So that's a really cool one, but I really like the repeating distance completed because this goes on forever. So if I say every 5 miles, you get, a milestone that says, every 5 miles or something like that. I'm not very creative, but you can have, basically it will just do it'll generate a milestone for every 5 miles that someone completes. So they do, 3 miles one day, they do 4 miles the next day, they unlocked a badge. The next time they do it, that time they do it, they get a 5 mile badge. And the next time when they go over 10, they'll get another 5 mile badge. So it basically allows them to just keep unlocking as they progress. So I really like this, and maybe we'll do a percentage of goal complete for 50, so it's halfway there. And the badge type, you can do all sorts of fun things if you want to, like a running or a different, like swimming or riding, or a custom uploaded badge. You can design your own. There's some cool online utilities to design your own badges, or if you have a graphic designer in-house who can do it for you, that's really good too. But I'm not going to walk through all that. It's not really necessary to go through today. So again, I'm setting all this up on the overall. If you needed to or wanted to, you can define that on the activity type level as well. But I don't think it's usually necessary. I think it makes things more complicated. But if you want to, it's there for you to do so. So I've got my 2 milestones added now. And what's really cool is there are more additional features you can tack onto this if you want to dive into it further. If you go back into the setup screen after you save, you can click this little link here to configure additional display settings. And you can add in a custom message to the milestone unlocked page. When a participant unlocks a milestone, they'll have a page on their results page where they can actually see all the information associated with that, and they have a badge along with it. And you could type in a nice description about it with nice, formatted text. You can upload an image file to it. You can use custom HTML to drop in your own code if you are able to code it up or know someone who can, to make a nice, well-designed page here. You can also send a notification to participants when they unlock this milestone. So those are really cool. And again, those are all there for you after you save this page by clicking this little link here. You have to make sure you save the page before you are able to see that though. So moving on, let's talk about the running a specific distance challenge type. So if you go into goals here, before I do that, I want to add in an activity type for run. So I'm going to do the same thing here.
Hey, Matt,
and yeah.
While you're doing that, there is a question about the use of maps for open-ended. If there's, I'm sure a few people have questions about if maps can be used for open-ended.
They can, but I wouldn't recommend it. It doesn't make any sense because the way that it works is that open-ended challenges don't have a defined endpoint. So I really don't recommend doing that. For a fixed distance challenge, I think they're great, but for open-ended, I don't think it really is useful from a user standpoint to see some arbitrary set like end goal if it's a open-ended challenge, if that makes any sense at all. So yeah, I like the maps for defined distance challenges, but not for open-ended ones. Because they can all be different. Like everybody can have their own personal goals, so it kind of throws the value of having a defined map out the window, I think. So let's talk about this one. So for the run a specific distance setup, we do have a goal for everybody to reach 3,000 miles, let's say. And again, this is not necessary, but I like showing the progress bars here, and I could upload a map. I'm not going to walk through that today. But the most important thing for defined goal challenge events is to add a milestone that is the same as your end goal, because we're going to be using this milestone to sort on later. So let's add a milestone, and we're going to use this fixed distance completed milestone and say you reached the end, and it's at 3,000 miles, and we'll just let it be automatic, that's fine. So this is what I'm going to actually use as my sorting mechanism later on. So I won't add any others in here, but you certainly could add specific milestones along the way. A lot of people will have an actual, like a map of what you would be running if you were to run across the United States, and they could do like, a fixed distance completed 1,000 miles in, and they reached Columbus, Ohio. I have no idea if that's 1,000 miles from the coast, but and they may, upload a description and some photos of the town that they would pass through if they were to be running along this course in this way. So you can certainly do that type of thing. All right. So now I've got my goals set up for both of these. And now let's move on to the result sorting. So to do the result sorting, it's a little bit confusing because you have to go back into the virtual result settings to verify that you have everything done right. So let's go back into our run a lot, and we'll see, we already set this up, greatest distance with time tiebreaker, so that one's all good to go. Let's check the run a specific distance. So this is the one where I want to actually change things up, because I don't want to say the person who's gotten the most amount of mileage is the winner. I want to say the person who got to the end checkpoint first is the winner. So this is when you use this kind of confusingly labeled optional custom pre-sort function. What this is doing is basically saying, I have these other types of sorting mechanisms that we now support, and I'm going to sort everyone first based on this thing, and then on this thing, and then on that thing. So for this one, our first tier of sorting is going to be the date that everybody has completed a milestone. And then it will let you pick which milestone to sort on. So this one, I'm going to pick I reached the end. And basically it's going to store in the database when people unlock that milestone and use it for result sorting purposes. So what that does is basically say, Matt Avery, he unlocked it on this date, Bob Bickle unlocked it on a different date, who did it first, sort them ahead. And then if people happen to have tied, so I had myself and Bob on the same day, then we decide how the tiebreaker should be done here. So you could do lowest time, probably makes the most sense for a fixed distance type challenge. And if you wanted to, you can even do a additional tiebreaker, but usually not necessary. All right, so now I have this all ready. And I have my two different types of challenges that are kind of ready to go. And I believe we're almost ready to start testing things out. So this is the most important part of any race setup, is testing it out yourself. So something that I think a lot more people need to do. So if you are on your race and you click the view website link up at the top here, it'll bring you to your race dashboard. And again, this is in draft mode, but I'm able to see it because I'm the owner of the event. I created it myself. It's not available to the public. You'll see this little banner here indicating that to you. So let's go in and sign up. Pick myself. I'm going to register for the Run a Lot challenge in this. Now I have this like a little step inserted in here, and it's asking me if I want to sign up for emails and stuff like this. I don't want this step in here. It's annoying, and I don't think it's useful to the user, so I'm going to remove it from my registration. So this is a really useful feature that I think everybody should know about and understand, because it's very powerful and very dangerous. So fast registration options is really cool, but it also can cause problems, so it's good to understand it. So fast registration, if you type in fast up here, you'll be able to get to it, allows you to remove or limit different steps within your registration process. And there's a few ways to do it. You can do like, if it's a mobile browser, remove some steps. If it's a specific date range, remove some steps and some other things. I'm just gonna say for a date range, I'm gonna do today until next year. I don't care about memberships, custom questions, donations, any of these things. I'm not even including these things, but I don't want to include them anyways. So let's get rid of this, but specifically this virtual race phone email settings is the most important thing. Yeah, so I'm just going to skip all those things. I haven't set up any of that. That's just going to save me more clicks in my registration process. So my people registering will be more likely to complete the checkout process. So now if I go in and do this, I get right to the final step right away. So, you may have, t-shirts that you're doing and you have giveaways and stuff, but if you don't, using fast registration makes things way, way easier to get conversions through. So I set this up as a $0 transaction. So I'm just going to go ahead and complete this. And let's go back in and sign up again for the other challenge, the run a specific distance. Great. Now, I'm all registered, but what do? So what you can do to log miles as a participant, the easiest way I think to do it is to just direct them to their profile on RunSignup. So let's go to our profile. And we'll see that under this upcoming events section here, I have a bunch of upcoming test races, but these two blocks are my test challenge events that I just created coming up on the 10th. So what you can do is just click Submit Virtual Results, and this will bring me to my form where I can log my activities. So when you're logging activities, you have to put in the date, obviously. You got to put in your distance in miles. I could say 3.1 miles, or I could convert from 5 kilometers to miles, and it'll do it automatically for me. Entering in my time, pretty slow these days. Let's make that 30. And if I want to, I can enter in elevation gain in feet per meters. I don't really know. Additionally, you can put comments in, you can put things like emojis, all sorts of fun stuff. Great day out, 70 plus degrees. So you can do one at a time here if they want to. You can also add another activity. So you can log 2 runs on different days or on one day in one go if you wanted to. You have the ability to load an activity from a file, like a Garmin watch or a cycling computer or something like that. So those are the options there. If you have any questions about importing the activities from a CSV file or locking an account, they're a little bit different. Basically, this is only really useful if participants are transferring from one result to another and they want to bring along any old activities that they had logged. There's the ability to download them all and import them back, but most people can ignore that. If participants are really worried, they can lock their account. This allows only them to post results. Usually we have a basic authentication that just lets them enter in like the email address used or the phone number used on the registration in order to post results for them. If a participant is more concerned about privacy or something, they can go ahead and lock their account here, but we don't recommend that unless they absolutely need to. So this is the Run a Lot challenge, remember. And because I said that I want to set a user-defined goal, I am able to change that here. I can say that I want to make my personal goal 25 miles. And now my personal goal has changed from the 100 miles down to 25. So let's submit that activity. Oops. And it says that I was too slow. So basically what this did was it said that, you may have actually entered a walk here when we are expecting a run. So the person can say, what, I'm sure that's accurate. I'm just a really, really slow runner. But, this was hopefully will prevent people from logging the wrong activity type. So let's make that a little more reasonable. And in order to override it, I just check that box. All right, now my activity is saved and the results will show on the results page in the next 1 to 3 minutes. The way our system works is there's like a background process that runs every 1 to 3 minutes to recalculate and recalibrate all of the results in a race. So just have to be patient while that happens. In the meantime, let's go over to our challenge and do the run a specific distance. So this one, again, we don't have a personal goal on. Let's just say I did 13.1 miles and I did it in 130. This is, where I actually did 130, let's say, and I don't want to put elevation gain in. Now, I must have messed up my date range on here. So this is really important stuff. This is like, I wouldn't have caught this if I was just speeding through it, and you would have opened up your challenge and people wouldn't be able to log their activity. So let's go back to our challenge here and see what's going on with this. We got the run a specific distance event, and it's telling me, what is it telling me? The activity is outside the accepted date range. So, yeah, here we go. So this is why it's yelling at me. I got the accept activity date starting 2021. There's my problem. This is why we always test. So now it should allow me to enter this in. Perfect, great. See, again, this is why we do this stuff, guys. This is good. This is good stuff. So now let's go check out and see what's happening in the results. So I've got on the results tab 2 result sets, the virtual run a lot and the virtual run a specific distance. Looks like the run a lot results have started to come through. And I can now see I've got my 25-mile goal for myself. I've done 3.107 on it. I can see my my little activity log here. And it gives me a total tally of 3.107 miles. It shows it here as well. And it shows me my total time for the run activity and the average pace for the run activities that I've done. If I look at my trophy case, it'll show the badges that I've yet to unlock. I haven't hit 5 miles yet, and I haven't hit my 50% milestone yet. It shows me my total elevation gain and the activity information right up here. Now, if I wanted to, I can go in and log more activities. So I can go in here and just put in some more. Submit that guy up, and it tells me, look, I unlocked my 5 miles and I did it 3 times. So I got 3 badges for that. It's pretty good. And it says I've done 15 total. So that's really great. And I unlocked my halfway there. So you can click in and view more information on this, share it on your Facebook, and so on and so forth. Go back to your trophy case. You can see all my badges I unlocked. My next one that's grayed out, ready to be unlocked the next time I log my mileage, which is coming up pretty soon. So it's pretty cool. Let's check out the other one. Let's go to results, check out the specific distance. So this is the one where we're trying to do, a specific distance of 3,000 miles. I'm nowhere near it, but it still shows me, my 3,000 mile and my 1,000 mile, and so on and so forth. So it looks like everything is working really nicely here, and it's working as expected. So let's go back to my dashboard. So what you can do in the back end is actually view a bit more of this information from a director standpoint. If you wanted to update some things, you are able to do so using the virtual challenge results menu and the virtual race milestones report and the virtual race team milestones report. This gives you an overhead view of all of the milestones that were unlocked by all of the people in your event. You can go in and use the search function to filter which milestones you want to see in this report and what events you want to see. In addition, like you can say, I want to look at the ones that were achieved between a specific period, and you can download this information to a CSV or an Excel file or whatever you'd like. Some people will use this if they want to send out, if they had trophies for completing specific milestones, they could send out a package, use their address here, or send out a specific email to them, saying congratulations, they did something. We have some automated ways of doing that for the email, but for the shipping address, I think that's a really good way to kind of encourage people to keep logging, is to say you're going to send them out a special milestone badge, like an actual medal or something like that for some big challenge. If you click manage here, it brings up a list of all of the milestones for this person. So this is Matthew Avery, and he has done, 4 milestones. Now, if there was a situation where one of these was unlocked in error, they ended up putting 4,000 miles instead of 40 miles, you on the back end can come in and delete that milestone if they unlocked it in error. So this is where you can do it. Again, that is virtual challenge results, virtual race milestone report, and manage next to the person that you want to view a list of all of the milestones for, and you can go in and just delete them. Similarly, if you had team setup, we're not going to go through team setup right now, but if you did, you would be able to view more information and milestones for teams here. So that is what I wanted to go through today for setting up a basic challenge. I hope that it helped you get a better understanding of what you may want to do setting up a challenge in the future, as well as our best recommendations and how to just learn how to test an event, see what it looks like, get a better understanding of what challenges look like from a user side and how to update things in the back end. So we'll continue to be putting out more of these training sessions for challenges. We think that they're going to continue to be popular in the future, so you as timers should get a good idea of how to set these up and how to manage them, and how users will be able to use this system, because there's going to be more and more of them, and they're not going to go away anytime soon, we don't think. So yeah, I guess at this point, let's dive into any questions that we have. Don't have too much time left. Bill is asking, are there any more enhancements to challenges coming up soon? We have some planned. A lot of the big enhancements that we are planning are more on the back end in terms of cleaning up data, giving you more functionality, like in this report here, to be able to edit when a milestone was achieved and things like that. We are not doing too much in terms of new fancy features right now. We think we've got a really nice product, and we think that more people are struggling with knowing how to use it than people who are, don't have the features they need. So we think we have a really, really competitive product right now, and are we're more concerned about making sure that people are using it correctly. Gail's asking about notifications. How much of the how-to is already prepared and can be sent to participants? How to? Are you talking about how to post results? Yeah. So there's if you go to RunSignup help, well, let's do this, help.runsignup.com. No, this will bring me to the back end. There we go. Good. So if you go to help.runsignup.com and just type in post virtual, I bet we'll find something. Submit and manage virtual results. So yeah, this is a good guide that has all the different methods for posting virtual results. I think the best way is, again, via the profile. So let's see if we can find it. Yeah. So you could send this page. I don't know. I think the best way is just in the just directing them to their RunSignup profile and clicking the link to submit virtual results. And that's pretty straightforward. Again, we walked through it today. Just go to your profile, find the race you want to submit for, and click submit virtual results. Thanks everyone again for joining me today. We're going to be back next week. And Chris, remind me what's on the deck for next week?
I believe it's getting to the start line.
Getting to the start line? Cool. Yeah. So that one's going to be all about different types of start lines in this new hybrid race environment we find ourselves in. So definitely come back next week, and we'll talk to you then. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a good one.